In Argentina, demonstrations continue against the constitutional reform and the repression promoted by Jujuy Governor Gerardo Morales. In Thailand, the Constitutional Court suspended leading Prime Minister candidate and winner of May's nationwide elections, Pita Limjaroenrat, from being a lawmaker. And in Kenya, protesters and police violently clashed as 3 days of demonstrations against the cost of living and tax hikes kicked off. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Tuesday, in Argentina's northwestern province of Jujuy, demonstrations continued against the constitutional reform and the repression promoted by Governor Gerardo Morales. The mobilization, called by the Inter-Union of Teachers, State and Municipal Unions, gathered with torches in the capital of Jujuy with the slogan "Up with Rights, Down with Reform." Their main points focused on wage increases and the repeal of the constitutional reform. Demonstrators claim that the reform endorses the plundering of lithium and criminalizes social protests. They have also demanded the release of all those arbitrarily detained in the demonstrations. In Belgium, the third CELAC European Union summit closed without consensus, in which the heads of states of Latin America and the Caribbean demanded reciprocity and the elimination of colonialist pressures towards the region. During the closing ceremony, the need to stop the interference of other countries towards the region was stressed, in addition to the United States' blockade against Cuba. Latin American leaders disagree with European policies towards the region while expressing their neutral position on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The heads of state also rejected attempts to link the Latin American region to the NATO bloc against Russia, backing the principle of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace, adopted at the second CELAC summit held in Havana. Also in Belgium, social organizations and leaders of Latin America, the Caribbean and Europe attended the closing event of the People's Summit, which ran parallel to the CELAC European Union Summit. Several Latin American and European leaders spoke at the closing event, speaking in favor of the creation of a new multipolar world. The summit had previously issued a 9-point final declaration stating that at a time when the U.S. would like to have the world divided into state blocs disconnected and confronted with each other, the CELAC European Union Summit provided a forum to advance relations in search of a peaceful world that is also capable of respecting Mother Nature. Furthermore, the declaration strongly rejected any political or military action aimed at interfering with the institutions and constitutional norms of any of the states participating in the summit, and condemned media campaigns geared at destabilizing democratically elected governments in Latin America and the Caribbean. The President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, spoke about the importance of integrate countries of both Latin America and Europe and the Europe regions, and that history must not be repeated.
Yesterday we said that history does not repeat. But in order to do that, we need to take into account past events in order to prevent these events from happening again. We talked about the role of the countries in Latin America and the European Union. And the need for the Latin American countries to stay united. That is something that we need to do. We have talked about thoroughly about this topic, but we need to take action in order for it to happen.
Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Gil denounced that the application of sanctions is a brutal practice that violates human rights in order to bend the will of the people.
The European Union, that defends human rights so much, applies over Venezuela a brutal practice to bend the will of the people, and applies it with much more severity. It must also be said that the United States, when it attacks and confiscates our goods, when it confiscates us and eliminates any possibility of negotiation with our goods, it steals those goods.
For his part, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, gave an assessment of the select European Union summit in Brussels on Tuesday. He stated that the vice president spoke the truth that the country faces in the summit.
A real Venezuela, a Venezuela that is growing, working. The vast majority of this country wants nothing to do with that extremist right wing, with what Guaidó meant, with all those people who are unpatriotic, who deny Venezuela. Our vice president took our truth to the summit of the European Union and CELAC, held bilateral meetings in groups and gave public speech and a statement so that Europe definitely understands that Venezuela does not want to go back to the times of interventionism, of colonialism, and that we want respect, because with respect everything is possible. They must respect the social, economic, and political life. They must lift the sanctions they have on our country, because they are unjustified, immoral, illegal, and also criminal. They should lift them definitely and without conditions. We want Venezuelans do not accept anyone conditioning the internal life of the country. The sanctions should be lifted so that we can open the floodgates, the cooperation relations. Europe investors want to come to Venezuela, and they are welcome to invest in oil, gas, petrochemicals, agriculture, tourism, and industry. European investors are welcome. With respect, everything is possible.
President Nicolás Maduro also said that years have demonstrated that the Venezuelan people is the real power of the nation and that sanctions against the country must be lifted.
It is a fact. We want to turn the page. It is a fact that they were wrong all the way when they tried to impose on us a president that nobody has elected, the cheater and thief Guaidó. Years went by and it was shown who has the real president of Venezuela, who is the real public power of Venezuela, which is the Venezuelan society. We resisted, they are slow, they are attacked. Now we want to turn the page and hopefully start writing a new story between Europe and Venezuela. Hopefully it is on their side. We want to. Now it is on their side. Well, that there must be dialogue and respect, that Venezuela will continue its social and political process. At the dialogue table, there was a consensus, I can tell you, here between the two of us. There was a consensus that sanctions against Venezuela must be lifted. Well, that consensus must be complied with.
Let's take now a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In Nicaragua, a 6.5 magnitude earthquake struck Nicaraguan territory at 6:22 p.m. local time, with its epicenter in the Gulf of Fonseca, 70 kilometers southwest of Cosiguiña. Nicaraguan Vice President Rosario Murillo reported that the quake was strong, and she urged people to be careful, to clear roads, and to give priority to people with disabilities, children, and the elderly. She recalled that Nicaraguan people have been preparing for events such as this, and that all measures must be taken to ensure that what has been learned to protect life is applied. Authorities have not yet reported any casualties or material damage. Users of social medias report that electricity and telephone networks have been cut in some areas. In Colombia, 20 people have died and more than 14 are still missing after a landslide in the Quetame sector in the department of Cundinamarca. Local media reported that the incident occurred in the early hours of Tuesday morning as a result of heavy rains. Local authorities also said that rescuers had found 6 people alive and were continuing the search for the missing, including several minors. In this context, following the heavy rains, several houses in the sector were affected, leaving an unspecified number of people affected. The landslide occurred near a toll station about 60 kilometers from the capital, Bogota, and destroyed a road bridge. According to the World Meteorological Organization, the number of simultaneous heat waves in the Northern Hemisphere has increased sixfold since the 1980s, and the trend shows no signs of abating. The organization's warning comes at a time when several areas in the Northern Hemisphere are experiencing sweltering temperatures. Health authorities issue heat alerts in the United States, Europe, and Asia and remind people to hydrate and protect themselves from the sun. According to experts, Europe is the fastest warming continent in the world. In addition to threatening the health of the population, high temperatures contribute to the generation of fires. The UN said that the increase in extreme weather events underlines the growing urgency of reducing greenhouse emissions. In Greece, forest fires were reported due to the heat wave sweeping the European region. According to authorities, the flames caused the displacement of people, while at least 20 cities were declared on red alert. Officials urged the population to take the necessary measures as they foresee that the fires could increase. In this context, the high temperature numbers could surpass continental records of at least 48.8 degrees Celsius. At the same time, in the Swiss Alps, a heavy fire broke out in a forest above the village of Bitsch in the south of the country. Around 150 firefighters arrived on the scene to fight the fire with civilian and military helicopters, in addition to evacuating more than 200 inhabitants from the area. Local authorities reported no injuries to people or animals, as well as damage to structures, while the local police opened an investigation to determine the causes of the fire. A fire at an industrial site in Crimea, Russia, has caused the evacuation and paralyzation of a highway. The head of the Russian Republic, Sergei Aksyonov, informed that the Tavrida highway is blocked because of the fire in the Kryvsky district. He added that about 2,000 people in the area adjacent to the fire are being evacuated for safety. The operational center and all services are working at the site. The causes of the fire have not been yet clarified. Russia has replied to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, reminding him that they have 90 days to normalize agricultural exports. According to the Memorandum of Understanding on the Grain Agreement, also signed by the UN, in the event of termination, the agency has 90 days to continue its normalization work. The Foreign Ministry adds that it was just such a period of time that Guterres envisaged to restore access to the SWIFT system of an affiliated structure of the Russian Agricultural Bank. Moscow has reacted to the concern expressed by the UN Secretary, but clarifies that it does not trust the palliative measures because the organization lacks influence in Washington and Brussels. On Wednesday, China's top foreign policy official Wang Yi met with former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger in Beijing. Western media claimed that it was a surprise visit. Before the meeting with the director of the Office of the Central Foreign Affairs Commission of the Communist Party, the former diplomat met with the Minister of Defense, Li Shangfu. The final declaration of the meeting emphasizes that the peoples of all countries hope that both nations can assume their responsibilities and jointly ensure global prosperity and stability. The State Department informed that Kissinger is in China as a private citizen. Thailand's Constitutional Court suspended leading prime ministerial candidate and winner of May's nationwide elections, Pita Limjaroenrat, from being a lawmaker. The move is the latest setback for Pita's hugely popular progressive opposition party following nearly a decade of turbulent military-backed rule. The temporary suspension follows a complaint filed by the Election Commission against the Move Forward Party, leader accusing him of violating election laws for allegedly holding shares in a media company. Pita has denied he broke election rules and previously accused the Election Commission of rushing the case to court. Move Forward Party pledged deep structural reforms, from changes to the military to the previously untouchable monarchy. The May election, which saw a record turnout, delivered a powerful rebuke to the military-backed establishment that has ruled Thailand since 2014. TeleSUR English launched its own videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click on the video option to access our VOD platform. We will now take a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Kenya, protesters and police clashed on Wednesday morning as 3 days of demonstrations against the cost of living and tax hikes kicked off. Demonstrations take place in the country's capital Nairobi and other cities such as Kibera, Mathare, Huha, and Kayole. Riot police used tear gas and in some cases live ammunition to disperse protesters. The government ordered the closure of schools in Nairobi and two other cities as it attempts to ban opposition leader Raila Odinga's rally. Wednesday's demonstrations rejected the killing of 9 people a week ago amid mobilizations against the finance bill signed by President William Ruto. In South Africa, representatives from global political parties participated in a dialogue forum in the South African city of Ekurhuleni, a month ahead of the BRICS summit, which will be hosted in Johannesburg. Under the theme BRICS and Africa Partnership for Mutually Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development and Inclusive Growth, more than 54 political parties from around the world are participating in the forum. According to the African National Congress, the themes of the dialogue focus on global peace and security, inclusive multilateralism, strengthening the BRICS, and expanding their membership association to mutually accelerate growth and sustainable development.
We are for the silencing of the guns in Ukraine, the achievement of genuine peace, and the peaceful coexistence between Russia, Ukraine, and the neighborhood. We are fully behind the African Peace Initiative led by President Cyril Ramaphosa and the 7 other African heads of states and government to find a peaceful solution to the conflict by initiating dialogue between President Vladimir Putin and President Zelensky.
We do not want the war. However, those who actually stand behind Zelensky's regime, the USA and Western countries, do not want peace. They are doing everything to derail negotiations. We are grateful to the peoples of the world from all continents that they do not support illegal and criminal policy of sanctions against Russia.
Chadian leader General Mahamat Idris Deby Itno has pardoned 110 more people sentenced to jail terms following deadly protests against the regime last October. Demonstrations against the extension of the transitional rule broke out last October in the capital, N'Djamena, and several other towns. Deby was proclaimed head of state by the army in April 2021 after the death of his father, Idris Deby Itno, who was killed during anti-rebel operations after ruling for 30 years. More than 600 young men, including at least 80 minors, were arrested in N'Djamena on October 20th and in the following days and then sent to a prison in the desert town of Korotoro. After a month of detention, they were tried without legal representation and more than half were sentenced to prison terms. Now, a total of 436 people convicted of taking part in last October's protests have now been pardoned by Chadian authorities in less than 4 months. On Tuesday, Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida visited gas-rich Qatar to wrap up a Gulf tour centered on energy security and cooperation with Tokyo's main suppliers. The Premier arrived in Qatar from the United Arab Emirates after starting his tour in Saudi Arabia, where he met the de facto leader Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. During his tour, Kishida and Gulf leaders discussed how to deal with energy challenges in the face of unstable supply due to Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. Japan relied almost entirely on imports for its crude oil, with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar accounting for the bulk of its supplies. Prime Minister Kishida was making the first visit to Doha by a Japanese premier in 10 years.
Moreover, all 3 countries I visited have a strong willingness to transition away from their current economies, which heavily rely on exports for more than a half of their national revenue. Their aim to transform into exporters of decarbonized energy and diversify their economies and industries by leveraging their respective strengths of Gulf states and Japan. Through this collaboration, the Middle East oil-producing nations can be transformed into a global green energy hub, exporting decarbonized energy and critical minerals.
We have come to the end of this news briefing, and you can find these and many other stories on our website, TeleSUREnglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.